Hello, everybody. Welcome. I hope you had a lovely Easter. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Good.
Very good. Loving the sunshine.
Isn't it just gorgeous? Even though I feel as if I may be allergic to the sun because, and I know, I don't want to bring it into manifestation, but the last 2 days when I've been out in the sun, I've come back feeling really, really off, like really off. So I'm hoping not.
This morning was the first morning I have braved it without a jacket.
Uh-huh.
I thought it's been really deceptive, right? Because it looks so sunny, it looks so warm, but actually, especially down here on the coast, it has still been bitter in the mornings and during the day. And this morning I was like, I'm just going to test this. So just went out with a little lightweight, little yoga zippy top. And I was warm and good. We have turned a corner.
We have turned a corner. Whenever we get to a point around this time of the year, I always go, I guess winter wasn't that bad. You know what I mean?
And I go back and look at January and go, how many days of grey?
No, I always go, oh God, I guess it wasn't that bad and stuff, because I actually do like it when it's dark as well. So it gets to a point in the summer where I go, okay, we're done now. Like I need to get darker again and just like, sort of like cuddly at home. But yeah, it's been lovely. And with the summer, look at this segue, ladies. With the summer comes festivals. I know. With the summer comes festivals. Right, smooth. And one of the biggest stories at the moment is about the wireless festival being cancelled because they want to hire, or they want to bring in Ye, as they call him now, Kanye West. And they're saying his behavior doesn't warrant him being allowed into the country. Now, obviously, that's a whole conversation. And if I'm honest, I don't know the full story. But, it's about personal behavior. When does personal behavior become a liability? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, and I put a post out yesterday on my Facebook profile, I'm hearing a lot about personal branding. A lot about personal branding. It's become the new buzzword of 2026. Like everyone's talking about it. Gary Vee's talking about it. If you go on TikTok and stuff, you'll hear people talking about it. And it's like, yeah, personal brand means behavior as well, your personal behavior. And I don't think we're realizing the connections of these two things. So I guess the question I want to ask is, where does personal behavior, do you believe, start impacting your business?
I'm going to let Helen go first on this one, because I can almost see she's ready for it.
I have a really strong view on this one. Your personal behavior is the strength of your business.
Right.
So you can fake it for a very short period of time by putting it all out there, all that sort of stuff. Your posts can be beautifully written, etc. But the reality is the loyalty of your clients and your customers are completely dependent on how you act and how you behave.
Yeah.
Full stop. For me, personal brand is how you behave.
Love that. I love Helen's thought. So Helen's just like straight into it, like full stop, that's it and stuff. Right? Okay, bye guys.
Well, yeah, there's that phrase, you could put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. There's a bit of sort of one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is I've done 30 years in sales, and there is this thing called the high performing jerk. So you could have a salesman or salesperson who is absolutely hitting every single one of their targets, but is really toxic to the team and behaves in a way that doesn't drive team behaviors, is a lone wolf, all of that sort of stuff. And they have historically been highly tolerated because they brought the cash in. But the impact on the company's reputation It's actually really huge, and the impact on the team, the turnover, all of those things that happens. And so I really early on in my sales leadership journey became completely intolerant of high performing jerks. I just wouldn't have them in my teams because actually they're far more toxic. And yes, they mean you hit your targets easy, but it's not the right thing to do. So that's one of the reasons I'm just like, nope, done.
Love it. Love it. Well, before we carry on, I've just muted Joe because I can hear some background noise. But welcome, Joe. Joe is our new panelist. She's amazing. She's just fantastic. And I always get this feeling when I'm speaking to people, and I'll start speaking to someone and I go, and I just hear this voice going, you need to invite them to be a panelist. And that's how everybody became a member of this panel and stuff. Like, literally, it was just this deep knowing that they needed to be on the panel. So, Joe, I'm going to unmute you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
What is that noise? What's that?
I don't know.
It's like there's definitely not. It's almost like there's a radio behind you. Yeah. Oh, it's almost like you've got a tab open on your computer.
There isn't anything else open. That's a weird one. Shall I leave you and come back again and see if it's any better?
Yeah. No, it's okay. Well, yeah, you can sort of like log out and come back in. We're still here. We're just talking. You know what we're talking about. But come back in and see. But there's something going on. All right, my love. So Naomi, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah. So first of all, in complete agreement with Helen on this, but I'm actually going to take it away from a business sense because, like you said, personal branding has become such a buzzword. Honestly, I think that I have been trained for personal branding since I was a child.
Girl.
So, you know that my dad is still, fit, alive, 93 coming up.
Yeah.
And this was drilled, and I will really say drilled into me as a child and has been ever since. He still speaks to me like I'm 6 on occasions. And he always used to say to us, whenever we were going anywhere, to school, out for a night, off to play in the park, remember you're a Holbrook.
Oh.
And we get to hear everything that goes on.
Yeah.
So remember your name, remember where you come from, and remember that how you act always comes back on the name, the family, everything else. And yes, some people would probably think I was probably brought up. My dad was definitely the disciplinarian and came from a post-war single parent, family post-war. It was drilled into him. It was drilled into us. And I also went to a very strict convent school where we weren't allowed to go outside of school in our uniform and eat in the streets. Yeah. We weren't allowed to hang around on corners after school with groups of friends. We weren't allowed to remove our school boater until we were home. All those things. And I think that was personal branding.
Yeah.
So, everyone, like you say, is using it as these buzzwords and they're acting differently in public to how they are in private. Something I always bring the philosophy with my clients is, who are you being when no one is watching?
That part.
What woman are you being? What behaviors, what habits, what are you doing when no one is watching you? That is your personal branding. Like you said, Helen, or Vic, whichever one of you said it earlier. It's not the Instagram reels. It's not the carousels. It's not the brand photo shoots. It is the who are you when people aren't watching? Who are you when the client complains about something or, somebody trolls you? Who are you being? And that's what I think. I think it's become such a buzzword. Don't get me wrong. It's obviously a very lucrative buzzword, but actually a lot of us have been living and embodying personal branding for decades.
Yeah, we had manners maketh the man. Irrespective of gender, but that was the drill that we had.
Yes.
How you behave is who you are.
Yes.
Full
Yeah.
stop.
It's funny because my dad always used to say, he goes, be careful who you speak to on your way up because they'll meet you on your way down. You know, my dad used to say that a lot. And Naomi, you've just reminded me that I went to boarding school. I actually went to a convent school as well. I only went for a year though, and stuff. It's like they got rid of me after a year and stuff. They're like, and stuff. They're like, and I only found out recently that was because I used to tell the nuns that they were wrong and stuff like. And I'd be like, "Can you imagine?" Yeah. So thanks for that reminder because I was like, "Oh, I went to convent school as well." Yeah. So again, welcome to Joe McMeekin. How are you, my gorgeous?
I'm good, thank you very much. Is that better?
It's a lot better, thank you.
I moved as well, so I don't know what it was, but anyway.
So we're talking about when personal behavior becomes a business liability. So where do we draw the line? And this is for Joe's benefit and for anybody who's joining later on, is, you know, I thought it would be a really good topic to talk about today based on the whole Kanye West thing that's you know, the whole scandal that's going on there and the cancellation of the wireless festival, but also the fact that we're hearing a lot about personal branding now. It's like I can't switch on TikTok without somebody talking about personal branding, and I'm like, is this new? Because I did my personal branding. Well, again, to Naomi's point, I've been doing it for my whole life, but then I actually did an exercise for my personal branding, as in what colors and everything else. But the colors could be as gorgeous as possible. If I'm not a stand-up citizen, and I'm not saying that I'm a goody two-shoes, but you know, if I can't show my face in public, if I can honestly have a conversation and know that that is the true version of me, if I can't do that, then it doesn't matter what colors I put out there or how many times I show up on social media. It means nothing. And also, if I'm one person in this panel, but a different person on my podcast and a different person when I'm seeing clients, then again, the personal branding hasn't got a leg to stand on. And I go back to the whole foundation thing. I'm like, I'm reading a book at the moment about personal branding, and it talks about, you need to know your purpose and stuff and everything else. And they see it as your purpose as in your why. And I'm like, no, your purpose is what you're here to do. So it gives you enough grounding so that in your personal branding, when shit hits the fan, so to speak, you can stand tall and still weather the different climates. It's not something that is just good enough when things are great. It's actually for the times when things are not great. How do you show up when you're being challenged? How do you show up when things are not going your way? So I think personal branding is a bigger story than that. So I go to Joe. What are your takes on personal behavior when it comes to business? And, you know, is it something that you've seen? Are you passionate about it? Are you somebody where you go, do you know what? I don't really see it. As I know what your answer is going to be, but I just want to give you that bit of flexibility to fall into this response.
Yeah. So I think for me, alignment of values and showing up in that alignment of values is a huge part of what I do from a work perspective, particularly around inclusion and accessibility. And it sits very, very centrally to what I do. And it's been something that I have had to unlayer. And in terms of my alignment with other businesses and how I work and show up and align myself and talk openly about those values and alignment as well. I think that very much comes into what we're talking about here too. But what I will say is I think that it's multifaceted. I think that it is not just as simple as being able to embody, to show up, to align sometimes with what we believe. I think, you know, if I put my clinical hat on and my clinical experience on, I know that sometimes for us, whether you be neurodivergent, whether there's a history of trauma, whether there are challenges in the way that we communicate or interpret language, or particularly if you're coming from a marginalized space, actually embodying yourself authentically and confidently to be able to show up within a space of personal branding and values and alignment isn't easy. And it's something that takes very active work when it comes to what we do, how we speak, etc. And also from a regulation point of view, there is I always say that impact matters more than intention, and that's something that we really need to embody too. But we also have to consider that we communicate, live, and experience the world in different ways, and we're not always going to align. But we do need to have an understanding of that impact. But I think it's a huge thing as part of my work and my business, and something that I've had to really learn to embody confidently. The more that I sit within my own values, the more confident and comfortable I feel about kind of challenging some of those thought processes or experiences gently, and sometimes not so gently, in what I do. But it's massively valuable, and I think people know it, and that's how we build trust, whether that's intuitively, whether that's because we're people who recognize and pick up on patterns with one another. People can read, and they can read energy, and they can read like the body language and the experiences, even if we don't know and we can't pinpoint it or put the language to it. Very often when we are showing up in authenticity, it can be sniffed out really quickly, can't it? In comparison to not. So important.
Joe, I think that's really interesting, because when Vic was speaking, I was like going, actually, when you're in those conflict things, if you don't know your own worth, it's so easy to then not act from your behaviors, from your values, because actually you get really defensive.
Yep.
Because there's that massive, am I good enough, screaming. And I think you're so right, that work that you need to do on yourself to get to the point where you feel worthy, you know that you are enough, then allows you to actually be who you are in all of those situations. And I think that's where, the personal branding workshop, come and join me for 90 minutes to find out how you can really, embody your authenticity. You're like, hang on, this has taken me years to this point. And I think that's such an important point you just made, Joe.
But it needs continued challenge as well. One of the things that I've had lots of conversations with in the last couple of weeks in particular around visibility of that authenticity, and how we talk and how we create impact or take ownership for the impact that we've created, whether that's intentional or not. Like, that needs challenge. We need to be surrounded by people who are going to challenge that with and for us, so that we can continue to grow as well. Because if we're constantly in this echo chamber of being told that our values are correct, or that our thinking and our thought processes are not being expanded, and we're not living outside of our own experience. And particularly, like, I sit here as a white cisgendered woman who's straight presenting in a straight sized body. I have marginalization. I am neurodivergent, I'm queer, and I am a SEND parent. I'm a carer to 2 disabled kids. I have marginalisation, I experience it, but outwardly to the world, that's not what it appears to be. And I also have a significant amount of privilege I have to recognise. So if I'm not being constantly challenged by people from different walks of life and different diversities, different lived experiences, and I'm not constantly expanding my thinking and working out where my own boundaries lie around the impact that may be being had and presented, I'm also not going to grow, and I'm also not going to look at things outside. It's just not as simple as saying. And I know one of the things with like the Kanye West situation that's come up is around bipolar as well, and the impact of bipolar and mental health, etc. And it's a really relevant discussion. It doesn't minimize the impact.
No.
It's a nuanced point that we have to take on board, that we have to consider as well.
See, it made me think, and Naomi, I'm going to come to you next, but it made me think about, when I read the whole bipolar thing, I was like, a few weeks ago, we're talking about Tourette's.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm confused. I'm like, why is it that one is forgivable in one, and then why is it that the other isn't? And do you know what I mean? Because I was like, isn't it the same thing? It's like the reason why he's been blocked in most cases, according to the press, is that he's, made anti-Semitic comments. Yeah. And so when I was like, yeah, but somebody could argue that the Tourette's guy said the N-word and stuff. So are we not in the same situation? And why are the rules different? And again, I have no bias to one or the other, to be honest with you. I mean, the concert's just down the road from me, funnily enough. But I have no choice and stuff. So or not choice, but I don't have an opinion about whether it should go along or not. I'm just thinking it's quite interesting how decisions are made. However, it also makes me think, and Naomi, this is for you, is it that leadership today is more about performance rather than personal conduct? Because, you know, even from like just the Kanye West thing and stuff, it's like he's done so much performing that by the time you want to hit down to the personal conduct, it almost turns into like a bit of a buffet, or that, and it's very difficult to pull apart a buffet, isn't it? What are your thoughts, Naomi?
Yeah, I absolutely. You know, that word performance as well. I think there is so much around that because it is lucrative. So whether it is that it's, you know, the collaborations or the deals or getting in the press or the publicity or going viral or whatever it might be, I think that sometimes that is used to serve a purpose. But then back to Helen's point of, and, you know, all of our points really about being authentic, that's when you can't be authentic, because when you have performed, you almost don't know who you are underneath it all. You're so busy masking for the likes, the deals, the financial aspect of it, that actually when it's all stripped back, you don't know at the core who you are when it comes to your values, what sits with you, what doesn't sit with you, what you're willing to stand up for, what you're not. And I think that's my view on it, is that you're absolutely right. I'm seeing this performance everywhere, especially in the business world right now, of people like saying the right thing, ticking the boxes. But then we see something and we're just like, hold on a minute. Last week, you said anybody who does X, Y, and Z is this, and you're doing Y. And you think we've all forgotten that you said last week that X, Y, Z is completely, you know, this. So, and again, I think that comes down to people not living their true self. So they actually, it's almost like that thing, isn't it, of they actually don't know what they said last week.
Yeah.
Because they're so out of alignment. And look, I can honestly say I lived that life for many, many years. I was totally out of alignment, not, you know, because of trauma, because of all these different things. But I have, you know, I think it was Joe that said about like the unlayering, and I've done so much unlearning and unbecoming in my 40s to then be able to take the mask off and do all these things. I absolutely agree that performance is huge, but I think it's because so many people just don't know who they are underneath it all.
Yeah.
So we've had Shelley Shulman, who is normally on here as a guest speaker. Hi, Shell. So Shelley says, I have bipolar, and it made me mad that he blamed it on bipolar. So I didn't realize it was him blaming it on him, on his behavior on bipolar. I thought somebody else was. So that's interesting as well. It's like, is it a bipolar behavior? Do we know if it is a bipolar behavior?
I mean, I think it's a very complex area. I know one of the things you touched on before was about the Tourette's side of things, and I think one of the reasons that with Tourette's there was a greater discussion around level of responsibility and kind of choice, as it were, within it, because of the neurological responses that happen that are completely uncontrollable with Tourette's and tics. I think you can only meet yourself as far as you've met yourself, can't you, at the end of the day? And that depends on your environment, the people you're surrounded by, the support that you've got, so many factors, your perceived sense of safety. When we don't feel safe, we automatically go into our fight, flight, freeze, fawn trauma responses. Now, from a bipolar perspective, you know, in a manic phase, in a phase where there are maybe more challenges, particularly if you are a public facing performer, you still have a responsibility. And again, I think we see this with lots of a variety of need and diagnoses, etc., we all have a responsibility to take care of ourselves. We have a duty of care to ourselves. There are so many reasons why so many of us don't do that on the daily as well. But I would agree that we can't make the impact of that any less as a result of it being linked to a mental health need or a diagnosis of some sort, because the impact is still significant and we have to take responsibility for that impact, particularly if there's a pattern of behaviour as well. You know, when we're seeing kind of patterns that are repeating and happening regularly, but equally we know that resourcing is really challenging. So, and I'm not saying that for him resources are a challenge by any means, there's a definite sense of privilege there, isn't there, in terms of access to resources for support. But for many people, actually resourcing and access to support to be able to embody authenticity and to be able to access support for mental health, for example, and break down some of those patterns and those challenges, it's a barrier, right? It does exist. It doesn't make the impact less. It doesn't make the impact any more excusable. But there's always more than one truth, isn't there, in these things?
Yeah. So Shelley Shulman's going mental on Instagram. She's like, we've got enough to deal with when it comes to mental. What did she say? She goes, we have enough stigma about mental health as it is. And she says, and he publicly admitted that he refused to take his medication. So I guess my question, Helen, is how should businesses then respond when behavior is linked to mental health? Because especially at the moment, I feel as if everybody's scared of being cancelled. So organizations want to behave in a certain way. And, you know, and the people around him, I think the only person who really doesn't care is Kanye, and maybe or the rule breaker or whatever. So he's just like, you know.
It's really wireless, because the money that they must now be losing because of what's happened must be absolutely huge.
Around £25 million.
Yeah.
So, and that's not just for the event, that is for every person who has been hired and told that they've got a job, to all the businesses who have gone out and stocked up because it's going to be a busy weekend, to the suppliers. The whole impact has been priced at around £25 million, if not more. It's a massive impact, and that's excluding people who have made plans, you know, to travel from around the world. I mean, it's a big deal. And you know, one of the questions I had was, you know, who suffers in this? And I think every stakeholder who's involved in it. But yeah, Helen, how do you think businesses should respond to that? I mean, because we've got businesses. So what if that happens to us? How do we manage that?
So I think it's a really interesting conversation around responsibility, because organizations have a duty of care to the people they have, but also to the business. And what that means is the organization has a responsibility to maintain the profitability and the viability of the organization. And that's very different from personal responsibility and that duty of care that we each have. But it's very difficult for individuals within an organization to take personal responsibility when it is so rife for lack of organizations, institutions, systems taking responsibility. But then the flip side, how can organizations, systems, you know, sort of, you look at, you know, some of the behaviors across the pond at the moment and some of the political institutions, how can individuals then take personal responsibility when their institutions are just so blatantly not giving a damn about having to take responsibility for their care of duty for their constituents and all of those sort of things? So I think responsibility is a really interesting thing when it comes to business, because it's a two-way street. And you can't have organizational and business responsibility without personal and individual responsibility for those individuals within the business, but vice versa. How can you ask someone to be responsible when you're not going to be as a business? So I think for businesses, it's really difficult to actually step back and separate the two behaviors, because they're intrinsically intertwined. but it's also incredibly important that you do, because otherwise what can you control becomes a question that you can't answer.
So, hi, Alpha. So, it's you see, to me, that seems really simple. But then I go and look at, for one, as small businesses, I don't know if we've got the capacity for that. Two, and I guess, I would go to Joe possibly to sort of like go, well, Joe, can you provide me some expert advice? Because, and Joe will actually tell us what she does as well, because we haven't even given her an intro. But I'd go to someone like Joe and go, okay, what are your thoughts on that? But then in an organization that's a multi-billion pound organization, everybody's cutting corners, and the capacity to be able to do that sort of due diligence just isn't there. So it's and the honest truth is, I don't know the answer to that question and stuff. I'm just like, how do we make it so that we draw the line between compassion and accountability, between having to explain what you're doing or just owning to what you are? Because in Naomi's voice, she was like, people have got to the point where they're forgetting what they're saying, they're forgetting their behaviors, and this so-called thing as a brand is so diluted. People, it makes me laugh, and I'm going off on a tangent now, but it makes me laugh that people go, oh my God, people aren't buying from me because maybe of the price, or people aren't buying from me because of the economy. It's like, no, people aren't buying from you because they don't trust you.
Yeah.
People don't buy from you because because you're not showing up as yourself. I feel as if people are saying that Kanye is not good at what he does because he's if you like his music, then you deem him as successful. But equally, I think people would struggle to take his side in most cases because of the behavior. And it's like, it doesn't matter how good your product is, we're not buying. You know what I mean? And people, I guess the organizations are prepared to take a 25 million pound downfall rather than bring a behavior that could have a bigger impact into the country. Scary.
I think when you reach a certain size of particularly from a corporate perspective, when you reach a certain size and you are as active, like they're going to sell tickets next year. They'll sell tickets. Yes, they'll lose audience members, but they'll also replace them with people who don't have the same kind of moral and ethical values as well. And so where is the like for a smaller business, the level of challenge that exists around reputational damage is really significant. And sometimes in my job, I feel a little bit like I'm some kind of PR consultant as well, talking about how we present ourselves and how we represent ourselves and what the risk factors are, etc. But actually, on some level, there's less like backlash for bigger firms. There's more power, there's more control. Like that power dynamic in itself is concerning, isn't it? And we've seen so many politicians, corporate entities, like from a capitalist perspective, actually just standing by those really slightly dodgy ethical values and then some from there. And this, is that another case of this? Really, they will still sell tickets. People would still go if, releasing again next year. I don't think that they're going to feel the impact.
Right. I see what you mean. So, Joe, do you want to just tell everybody what you do? Because, we haven't introduced you. So I feel like, and we'll do it again next week, but I really want people to sort of hear what you do.
Yeah. So I am Joe McMeekin. You may know me in the space as Joe McChicken. A lot of people do. It's not actually my real name. I am an inclusion consultant with a background clinically. I've spent 17 years as a paediatric physiotherapist working in neurology and neurodivergence. We support across the umbrella of the business. We support all the way from childhood right the way through into adulthood and businesses, supporting businesses to become more accessible, more inclusive, to embody their values and their culture around inclusivity and accessibility. As I said, I have some lived experience. I'm queer, I'm neurodivergent. I've got 2 neurodivergent kiddos. You can see autistic PDA in the background. Absolutely no way of navigating the Easter holidays without one of them coming and diving into a screen somewhere along the way. But they're both out of the education system as well. And part of what I do from a non-profit organisation point of view is running an alternative provision with equine therapies. So we have a herd of horses, a sheep, 5 chickens, a whole heap of trouble that comes with all of it. But we love it. So, and we get to make impact. So yes.
Yeah. Did you talk about events as well?
No. So yeah, so one of the things that I do around the inclusion consultancy side of things is to support with events, of all scales, be that kind of a one-to-one in-person day right the way up to 1,000+ people events, arena-sized events, in being able to navigate the accessibility and the inclusivity, being able to create more inclusive and accessible spaces. I never say that we create safe spaces. I never say that we create inclusive spaces, because it's just not possible. The work is never done, and it's completely subjective. It's all down to experience. So yeah, supporting businesses to basically reach more people, have more impact once you've kind of got them in, take care of them, and do really great things alongside the values and the cultural values that you've got, and the way that you want to show up for those in your business too.
Thanks, Jo. Thank you. So you talking about the whole PR thing. So I have this real secret, right, that a lot of people don't know about me. I divulged it on Facebook yesterday, that there's a woman on TikTok called Molly McPherson. I adore her. She is a crisis management expert, right? So she's the person that gets called when the big wigs screw up. And she has to manage the crisis and manage the narrative and everything else. And if she's not involved in it, she will then come on TikTok and take you through the whole process of how it's going to happen, what's going to happen. This is the line they're going to take. It's fascinating. Like, I reckon that in another life, I may have been like an investigator and stuff, because I'm like, oh, and you go down a hole, right? I love her. Anyway, the one that came up yesterday was about the girl, what's her name now? Blake Lively, who, if I'm really honest, I saw her down the street, I wouldn't know who she is, but because of this whole thing, so she's accused a co-star of I don't know what's it called, inappropriate behavior, shall we say that, and he's pulled out all the receipts, right, like messages from her, and like literally there's been no foundation. And right now she's been completely thrown underneath the bus, because in Molly's words, there's nobody who's sticking up for her, there's nobody who's got her back. But it's so interesting how, again, it brought to me the whole thing about personal brand, because Molly was talking about, she goes, the personal brand and behaving in a certain way, almost thinking that nobody's going to find out, thinking that your clients are stupid, and then expecting a different result and what have you. So my question to, I'm going to just throw it out. Is it that we're holding leaders to a different standard, or is it just that those behaviors have existed for a very long time and we've just ignored them?
The latter. I also think leadership has massively changed. So if we go back 100 years, what our leaders were expected to do was to manage people.
Yeah.
What we now need leaders to do is role model behaviors for people. And so actually leadership is still used as a reward for longevity and loyalty and for doing a good job. But actually leadership now is a vocation. I think there should be degrees in leadership. There should be training. You become a leader, and that is your career track, like you do an engineer, because the skills we now need to lead organizations, to lead institutions, to lead the systems are really different from what it used to be.
Yeah.
If you were a leader of a factory, it was really helpful that you started on the factory floor and worked your way up.
Yeah.
But now leadership is so completely different. So yes, I think we've massively ignored and swept under the carpet behaviors that have never been acceptable. But I also think leadership has fundamentally changed. And when we get on to think about, you know, hybrid teams, etc., I would love to be managed by an AI because they would approve my holiday really quickly. I can never be led by an AI.
Yeah.
And there's a massive difference between managing and leading. And I think the role of leader has just changed so seismically. And we're all still clinging to the old, and we've not realized yet.
Love that. Naomi, thoughts?
Yeah, well, actually, what just popped into my head, and you know me, if it pops into my head, I'm going to say it, is funny enough, I was having a conversation with somebody recently that I left corporate 10 years ago, but talking about a few previous leaders from our past lives. And what was really interesting was leaders who I thought had incredible reputations. Actually, they've not, like, it's all come out the woodwork.
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting how in my gut, I knew that these certain leaders were not leading, you know, in an authentic way. I knew that quite often they were taking the credit for other people's ideas and different things. And then it's only when you sometimes have those conversations that you go, oh no, like nobody in their team respected them. And yet you kind of saw them as this person. So I think, again, that kind of comes full circle back to, if you are not embodying your values, if you are not living in a way that, you know, you're the same person at home as you are in work, then it all comes back down to self-leadership.
Love it. Thank you. Joe, final words, thoughts?
I think leadership's hard. It's really, really hard, and it's really hard to get right. And again, it's that evolutionary process, isn't it, as well? We don't, I think it's really important in leadership that we embody the values, that we know and understand the people that we're working with. I think when you scale, that it becomes even harder, because it becomes harder to, you know, you have to trust through leadership. And there also has to be an element of trust in return as well. And that trust has to be earned and embodied and all of those things. But leaders also come under an awful lot of fire and an awful lot of criticism. But for me, that's the point at which we come constantly full circle back to the values. And I always talk about kind of inclusion and cultural values being like a really reflective cycle. We have to have a level of self-awareness. We have to have a level of reflection. We have to have capacity for change and response to that change. And we have to be able to evolve. And at the end of the day, if we can't evolve and we can't align continually to those values and keep coming back to them, for me, it's what, you know, when I'm presented with a moral or an ethical dilemma of some sort, and when I'm working with other businesses, if we come back to the culture and we come back to the values every time from a leadership point of view, we can't be going far wrong for ourselves and for what we want to do in terms of the impact that we're having in the world. It doesn't mean everybody else is going to align with it. But, you know, that's an ethics issue as well, isn't it? So.
Thank you. So here's my thoughts. I feel there is an element of mistaken identity. I feel as if there are people who, they don't see themselves as leaders. It's almost like they've got to a certain point, but they don't realize their responsibility. Like they like the status that comes with whatever they're doing, and obviously the money and everything else, but they don't realize the impacts that they have on the people around them, or the knock-on effect of the stakeholders that they have. You know, I think a lot of people think that, you know, as a leader, say, for example, if I'm a leader, I would probably think of me and my clients. It's so much bigger than that. The stakes are so much higher, and there's more people watching you and relying on you than what you actually realize. And then there's also the bit of when those personal behaviors start to betray you, because sometimes it can be a betrayal. I'm sure that not everybody wanted to wake up and be an absolute dick, you know, and stuff. It's like, you know what I mean? I'm sure people don't wake up and go, yeah, that's what I'm going to be today. However, life does happen. And this is where I come down to knowing what you're here to do. Because if you know to your core what you're here to do, it has nothing to do with ego. So when you get given your purpose, it has nothing to do with ego. It has everything to do with your divine purpose, which means it makes you feel uncomfortable. A couple of you on here have had your purpose and stuff. It's like it's not been easy to absorb. It's like, oh, let me go away and look at that again and stuff. Let me go away and see what that actually means. So when you know what you're here to do, then you start to understand why you do what you're doing, because then you can connect that together. Then you start to follow a line that is more authentic and more integral to who you are, rather than trying to be somebody that you're not. And it's the trying to be somebody that you're not, which is causing the trust recession. People keep going about trust recession. It's like, there ain't no trust recession. It's just you. There ain't no trust recession. Just act better. So, so to me, it's a bigger conversation that I'd like us to touch on again in a bit more detail. But as a leader, seek help. Come and see me. I'll give you your purpose. If there's another gap that you feel, just drop us a message and we'll find the right person for you to speak to. But yes, we do come under fire, but we come under fire because we've put our head above the parapet and gone, we want to do more and we want to help more. But, with that comes great responsibility.
Yeah. And that's why I think leadership's a vocation, not a reward.
Amen. Amen to that. Amen to that. Thank you so much. We will see you next time. That was a great conversation, ladies. And we will speak to you soon. Ladies, stay on whilst we just don't rush off. I'll just end the call and we'll speak to you later. If you've got any questions, let us know. Bye.